Welcome to Nicola's quick website tips. Today we're going to concentrate on making your website readable. By that I mean actually make it so people can read what you've written. You know, it's taken you hours and hours of hard graft to get that copy just perfect. Wouldn't it be such a shame if in fact most of the people who come to your site can't manage to read it? So today we're going to try and make sure that everything you've written is easy to read and easy to digest. Let's imagine your complete audience, 100% of the population. What if I told you that 60% of the population wears glasses? And if you make the font a little bit too small, they have to reach for those glasses to put them on in order to be able to read what you've written. Now, you've only got between 5 and 8 seconds to attract the attention of your web visitor. Now, if they spend 5 of those seconds looking for their glasses or longer, you've lost them already. So you do want to make sure that the font is large enough for those people to read it. Let's add another complication. 8% of the UK population don't speak English as their first language. So anything which impedes their ability to read what you've written is going to put them off and perhaps make them go to a site where it's easier to read the text. On top of that, 10% of the population is dyslexic. So if you write your copy in such a way that dyslexics can't read it or have difficulty with reading it, you've lost up to 1 in 10 of all the people who might be able to purchase from you. If, however, your audience isn't the entirety of the UK population, but is in fact older people, then even more of the population wear glasses as they get older. If perhaps your audience is entrepreneurs like yourself, well, it's an interesting statistic that over 35% of all entrepreneurs in the United States have dyslexia. So again, you could be excluding them awfully easily. So clarity and ease of reading is going to be very, very important. So let's move on how to make your content nice and easy for them to read. Everybody wants their website to look really cool and sophisticated. So one of the most common mistakes that people do is to use trendy methods of presenting their copy. For example, they will use whiteout text or a light coloured font on a dark background because it looks cool and sophisticated. The only problem is it can be very difficult for some people to read, much harder than if it's the other way round. Now let me go back to my point about dyslexics. One of the most difficult colours that a dyslexic finds to read is red, and for many people this is almost invisible. So you think by using red as a text is bringing emphasis to those words. Actually, it's doing exactly the opposite. On top of this, for many dyslexics, red actually moves. Not quite as wildly as that. It tends to shake. Sometimes it becomes blurry. Sometimes it sort of dances a little bit. It's much more difficult to read when the text is actually jumping around. If you combine the two and put red text on a black background, that is nigh on impossible for somebody to be able to read easily. So what works a bit more easily? Green will work more easily, but for colourblind people, and again for some groups of the population, green is not a great colour, but for the majority it's an improvement. Let's talk about colour blindness. We've got 2 tones here, which are in the red-green zone. For a colourblind person, they will have a huge amount of difficulty reading that. So this is the best way of presenting your text. A light background with dark text. Yellow background with blue text is one of the easiest, but obviously the old-fashioned black on white or dark grey on white works well as well. Let's move on and consider whether you should use capital letters to emphasise your message. Well, unfortunately, using capital letters is very hard to read, which is why it's not used on road signs while we use upper and lower case. And it's now come to mean that you're shouting. People using it in text, it means that you're shouting at them, and that's not friendly at all. So don't use capital letters. You can use small caps where there is a difference in the text size. However, it's still not easy. Underlining it just makes it go from bad to worse. Italics don't help your readability either, and if you combine it with underlining, you're in double trouble. So you say, what should I be doing? The best way to emphasise text that you want to draw the eye to is by making it bold and or making it bigger. Here I've done both simultaneously. Let's move on to the background for your particular font. Lots of people like to use interesting backgrounds to bring more life to their website. That's a fantastic idea, but don't use it behind your writing. Your writing is the most important thing there. Make sure it stands out. So, for example, using this kind of yellow to blue, which is called a vignette, where you go from one colour to another, actually distracts from your message. Using some kind of textured background makes it impossible to read, and you can see clearly that's a no-no. Sometimes people like to put text over a background picture. That's often the case in a banner on the home page. What I suggest is to avoid doing that, simply because it detracts from the message you're making. If you do want to put a message over the top of your banner or over a picture, put it in a white box so that it brings the text out. Even just a watermark type of picture will detract from the text. Using a patterned background also makes it very difficult to read, so I don't recommend any of those. So stick to a plain, pale background for the best results. The next question I just wanted to cover was which fonts you should use. There's loads of different fonts out there, and there's some which look really sophisticated and clever, and you may be desperate to use it. Some very trendy ones as well. So let me just give you some quick do's and don'ts about your font choice. There are 3 basic types of text. Serif fonts, and that's the one with the little feet at the bottom, which adds a little bit more complexity to your font. This works really well in newspaper. In print, it helps you to read it. Unfortunately, on a screen, it detracts from the readability, so don't use a serif font. This is a semi-serif font, but again, it's not the best to use. Although a semi-serif font is quite good, so you're better off going for a sans serif font, which is very, very clean and incredibly easy to read. So I would suggest going for one of these fonts. Finally, everybody wants to draw attention to the most important messages you've got on your website. Typically, they will be your call to action. Mistakenly, they often think that putting it in red, either red writing or, as I have here, red with a white-out text on it, will improve the draw for people to go and click on it. But actually, that's not the case. Research shows that this tends to put people off. Red is a colour of danger and actually tends to make people feel a bit anxious. And also, although the eye is drawn to it, a lot of people then can't read it, so your message is completely lost. So what I suggest is you use a larger font than you were for the rest of the text, use a brighter yellow, a darker colour font, and accentuate the important words, in this particular case, now and free, which are 2 really, really good words to use in marketing terms because they make a response, make those larger or bolder. If you want to really draw the eye, then you could try doing it in a funny shape. That helps to attract the attention of the visitor. So here I've got it in a star. To wrap up, here are my top tips of do's and don'ts when you're using fonts. So the really important things to do: make sure you use a combination of upper and lower text because that actually helps readability. Use larger text than you think you need. The weenier it is, the more problematic it's going to be for people who need glasses. Emphasize words by making them bold or bigger. Use a web-friendly font so it won't get muddled up or distorted by certain browsers. And use a sans serif font such as Tahoma. Use a pale background with a dark text overlaid, and go for blue, dark grey or black. The dark grey is quite nice because it's a little bit softer than black. And use pictures or diagrams wherever you can instead of using words because people can see those much more easily. Finally, never use block capital letters, underlining, and try to avoid italics. Avoid red or pink writing so that it's accessible to people who are colourblind and dyslexic, and never put text over a picture or a textured background. I hope you found this useful. If you would like help with your website or would like to know more about how you can make your website easy to read, please give us a call or visit our website.